What is up, my Lorcana goons? My name is Kevin, welcome to the Lorcana Goons channel, and it is officially Rise of the Floodborn season. So let's go ahead and say goodbye to Chapter 1, and let's say hello to our new Floodborn Overlord, shall we? If you guys are new to the channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like Lorcana content, and if you yourself are a Lorcana goon, join our Discord. The link is in the description below, and you can kick it with all the goons, talk about all these new cards and all these new deck lists that we're cooking up in there, right? But I just want to make this video real quick to say goodbye to Chapter 1. We started the Lorcana Goons channel a little bit within the first few weeks of the competitive scene of Lorcana. I want to say the very first video we did was the PPG Top 8 that happened back in the beginning of September, and it's been 2 months basically since Lorcana first came out in the middle of August, and it has been a journey. All in all though, we started off the season with the best deck being Ruby Amethyst. Everybody thought that was going to be the best deck before the actual cards came out due to Pixelborn grinding, and then Amber Steel Song ended up winning the very first PPG, and as time went on, those two decks seemed to be dominating the meta. While all this was happening, nobody could get product. People refused to pay more than MSRP, people did not want to support resellers, people still don't want to support resellers, and I understand that. As time went on in the next few months, it seems like some folks were able to acquire starter decks, however, it never was an accessible game for people, so a lot of the gameplay stuff did come from Pixelborn. A lot of the gameplay stuff has been coming from the small tournaments that the shops have been putting together themselves. So shout out to all the local game stores that were putting on 1Ks, 2Ks, big tournaments. PPG did a huge one twice already, and all that stuff really brings the community together and really keeps the community thriving. So big shout out to you guys. As the 2 months went by, there was plenty of sleeper decks that would end up in the top cut of the meta. We had Sapphire Steel, we had Emerald Amethyst, and the occasional Emerald Steel. So it wasn't like it was a tier 0 dominating meta. If I had to pick 5 decks that were the best for Chapter 1, it would have to be in this order exactly. Amber Steel Song, and I'm talking about the build that plays Lanterns, we're talking about the build that plays Whole New World, Rockstar Stitch, and Surfer Stitch. That for sure is 100% the best deck of Chapter 1. Don't want to argue with you guys, but I just gotta say it. The ability to use Lantern, Whole New World, Surfer Stitch, and Rapunzel all in one deck, and to use them consistently and to utilize all the plus sides of those cards in a deck really showcased how powerful that deck was. I know people don't like a Whole New World in some cases because it makes your opponent draw 7 cards, but you need to remember that card lets you draw 7 cards. That card is insane, and it is, I guess, a problem in Lorcana along with Rapunzel, but we'll see how they address that. But all in all, I have to give the best deck award to that Amber Steel Song variant that was very aggressive, that was able to take advantage of cards like Whole New World and Lantern and Surfer Stitch, right? We saw Surfer Stitch go from a $15 card all the way up to a $40 card, and that was because of Amber Steel Song. Now, don't get me wrong, the Amber core in general, the best core in the game right now, we can clearly see it through its meta capabilities as it was able to influence 3 meta decks, but I'll get into that right now. The second best deck, in my opinion, 100% has to be Ruby Amethyst. Probably should be the quote-unquote best deck, but the biggest issue is that it is a little slower at your win condition than Amber Steel. The only reason I don't say it is the best deck is because the mirror match for Ruby Amethyst is extremely awkward. You have to be able to win at least 1 game, maybe 2 games if you're lucky, but 50 minutes in a round is not enough for that Ruby Amethyst mirror match. And unfortunately, because of that, I think that is a big factor as to why I don't think it is the best deck. I think it's great to grind on Pixelborn because there is no time limit, but when you're playing in tournaments, unless you know how to consistently secure your wins with that deck, it's gonna have a bit of a learning curve, and that does put you at a disadvantage when you have to go into time a lot, because it's not even your fault. It's the fact that you're running into mirror matches, the fact that you're running into players who don't know necessarily what your cards do, and it is taking a little bit longer. So because of that factor, and because of other factors of like not being able to consistently see your win conditions, I do have to put it in number 2, but still easily one of the best decks. And if I ever run into that deck, I'm terrified. Number 3 has to easily go to Amber Sapphire. Again, another deck that took advantage of using Rapunzel, Surfer Stitch, but you're using stuff like 1 jump ahead, Grandma Tala, Mickey to, you know, jump your ink up all the way past your opponent significantly, so that by the time you do start using your Surfer Stitches and stuff, you're already ahead of your opponent, not only by cards in hand, but by the ink you have as well. And then it takes advantage of broken cards like You Have Forgotten Me and the Princess cards that have low strength, high willpower. So Amber Sapphire, number 3 in my opinion. Number 4 has to go to Emerald Amethyst. This deck was very budget friendly and it made a big wave, I want to say a month into the format, right? A lot of people started playing this deck at locals, taking it to tournaments, seeing a lot of success in tournaments. It's one of those decks where I feel like if you're the better player, you can outplay a lot of the big meta decks because you can see your win condition a lot quicker than something like Ruby Amethyst. I think it's a very powerful deck. I think it was slept on for a little bit. In tournament play, I did see a lot of people not be able to see like the best success in it past top 8, but there was plenty of people who ended up in top 8 with that deck. The next one, number 5, easily has to be Ruby Amber. Another deck that plays Amber. This deck came in out of nowhere towards the end of the format, and this ketchup mustard combination started just dominating a lot of the local scene, I think. Again, another deck that takes advantage of Lanterns, Rapunzel, Carefree Surfer Stitches. Very powerful, right? And being able to combine that with Be Prepared Dragonfire makes it a very, very strong contender. And it's going to keep being a strong contender when Rise of the Floodborn comes out. Obviously, I do want to give a shout out to Sapphire Steel players and Emerald Steel players and any other person who took your deck to locals and you did well, because at the end of the day, I think Lorcana is a game right now where you can be creative and you can take certain decks to locals and see success. You don't necessarily have to play the meta deck, in my opinion. I do want to give an honorable mention to the turquoise players, the high 5 deck players that are playing Emerald and Sapphire for chapter 1. That deck for sure easily in like one of the top contenders for like meta, in my opinion, as well. It just wasn't the deck that I wanted to mention in the top 5, so honorable mention there. And then another honorable mention to the Amber Steel mid-range deck that I forgot to mention. The Amber Steel mid-range deck, obviously one of the better Amber Steel, or one of the better decks in general for Lorcana, but it is still an Amber Steel variant, and quite frankly, I don't think it was ever as good as the turbo version that plays Lanterns and Whole New World and stuff like that. But the mid-range Amber Steel deck, still a very popular and a very strong contender for one of the best decks in chapter 1, so I do want to give an honorable mention and a shout out to that deck and all those players as well. But now that we've gone past chapter 1, let's take a look at 5 decks from the Rise of the Floodborn meta that I think you're gonna see starting this Friday as Rise of the Floodborn makes an appearance, right? So Amber Steel is not gonna go anywhere. You're gonna see it in Rise of the Floodborn, and I know we do want to see all these new cards come into play and like see how good they're gonna be, but the reality of it is people aren't gonna be playing with only Rise of the Floodborn cards in their deck. They're gonna be using cards from the first chapter. So I do have an Amber Steel list right here that looks very similar to the current meta of our Amber Steel song decks. However, this is a little bit more of an updated version with playing cards like the 1-drop Cinderella, the 3 Ink Benja, which is an item removal, and then we have cards like Strength of a Raging Fire instead of cards like Smash or Fire the Cannons, and we even have the 5-drop Beast, the Sad Boy, the new one that lets you draw a card at the start of your turn if he has no damage on him. So it's not like a big change in the deck list, but there's little things in here that you can note already that are gonna make an impact next format, like the 3-drop Benja. So Benja is a better version of Beast, hard-headed basically. It's a steel character that banishes an item. It is a 3-drop instead of a 5-drop, so you can play it way earlier, and it's still quest for 2 lore. A very strong card that's gonna do wonders in the Amber Steel mirror match when your opponent has Lanterns early and you gotta get rid of them, right? Strength of a Raging Fire, which is you're playing it instead of Fire the Cannons and Smash because it's inkable and you can kind of play around with the amount of damage you're going to be doing. It's not static. So the other beast, just to give some extra draw power. Cinderella on turn 1 seems like a decent play as well because it combos off with Rockstar Stitch, and if you play Cinderella turn 1, that means you can be our guest on turn 2 if you need to, right? Not sure how I feel about this list, but this is something that you're for sure going to see at locals. I bet you're going to see this on your first day of Rise of the Floodborn. Obviously, people are going to have their cards from last format and they're going to be trying to buy new cards, so they're going to be putting them into their decks from last format, right? So this is something to be on the lookout for. Another deck to be on the lookout for is going to be Ruby Amethyst, obviously. But let's check out the way Ruby Amethyst is probably going to be played starting Friday, right? All of the Merlin cards synergize very well with Ruby Amethyst, in my opinion. Some builds are playing multiple, some builds aren't playing any at all. I think you can play the Fox, I think you can play the Rabbit, obviously, and I think you could even play certain cards like maybe the Madam Mim Dragon or the Merlin Squirrel. Overall, there's probably a couple cards you add to that build to make it a little bit more aggressive. The first format, you had to use evasive characters to kind of secure that win condition against the mirror match, or even just kind of have like an aggressive board that your opponent can't clear. Now you can use the Merlin cards, which lets you bounce each other back and gain lore as you do that, right? So overall, there's a couple different cards here, like the new legendary Donald Duck that can potentially quest for 5. That's pretty nice. Then we also have the new Lady Tremaine. This card is cool to 6 uninkable. This basically removes a character from your opponent's board. They get to choose, so it is a little bit of a different situation as opposed to using something like Maleficent Dragon or Dragonfire. But when you play it, they have to remove a character and it's on turn 6, right? So that seems like it's gonna have a lot of high potential. We even have some new Sapphire cards that are gonna make big waves, along with the new Resist key term that is going to be found in not only steel decks but some other decks as well. So I have a Sapphire steel list right here that looks like it's going to go pretty hard. As you can see, people are still taking advantage of Whole New World, which is very reasonable. You can use the big Cinderella if you play the small Cinderella to shift into it and sing Whole New World. Another thing you can see is that they're playing Cogsworth, and Cogsworth is a very strong card against Tinkerbell. I've been testing this on Pixelborn with the limited amount of cards they have, and every time I play Cogsworth against an opposing deck, my opponent always does the math wrong for resist. They start doing weird trades, not realizing that Cogsworth has an ability, and even if they did read the ability, then it's usually hard to do the math on the fly that quick, right? A lot of pressures on the board. So this is something you're gonna have to learn to play around, resist and cards like Cogsworth. So be sure to read the opponent's cards. It happens a lot. Starting Friday, we're gonna have resist in the metagame, so be sure you're doing the correct math when you're challenging characters, because resist is big brain. Let me tell you, I be messing up a lot, and I thought I was pretty good at math, but sometimes I just can't. The math just ain't mathing for me sometimes. That's crazy. Look out for this. Look out for resist. Look out for steel decks that are gonna bump resist. Look out for Sapphire decks that are gonna take advantage of Cogsworth, or even cards like Sisu, right? Another deck that I need to go over for sure is gonna be the Discard Emerald Engine. So this can be found in a variety of mixes. I have seen lists playing it in Lemon Lime Aggro. I've seen lists playing it in Emerald Amethyst. I've seen lists playing this in Emerald Ruby. And overall, I think this for sure is not only hyped up, but it's gonna make an impact. You're gonna see this guaranteed on the first weekend of Rise of the Floodborn. People are so hyped for this discard engine because it is pretty decent. Prince John plus Sudden Chill or Prince John and Hypnotize, all those cards synergize so well. If you have 2 Prince John on board and you activate 1 Hypnotize, I'm gonna be drawing 3 cards, brother. That's so much. It adds a draw package to Emerald that I didn't understand Emerald needed so badly. But it's not just the draw package, because Prince John quests for 2, which is pretty cool. And he has ward, so he's just gonna stay on the board until you decide to quest with him, and sometimes you can clear the opposing board and you can quest with him freely. So a rather aggressive deck with a crazy win con of discarding your opponent's whole hand. Now obviously there's cards like the new Flynn Rider or the new Rapunzel that kind of help with that, but in my opinion it really is Prince John plus the action cards, or Prince John plus your discard engine, that you're really gonna have to be worried about or have to really like play around, right? I guarantee on the first weekend of Rise of the Floodborn, you're gonna see your opponents dropping a Prince John on you, and you're gonna get tilted because once they start discarding your hand, it's over. I do think that the new cards in the meta naturally play around that very well. A lot of the Merlin cards let you draw, a lot of the Sapphire cards let you +1 now, and all the Amber cards just give you pluses because of the new Rapunzel cards, right? Discard meta coming to a locals near you. So be sure to prepare for that discard meta, guys. All in all, I think Grab Your Swords is still going to be relevant because it outs Prince John kind of early. However, resist is a heck of a term, right? And the last list I want to go over is another Amber list. This is going to be the Ruby Amber deck, right? So this is like a take on the current Ruby Amber list, but with some newer stuff. I want to acknowledge Shere Khan as one of the best cards in Ruby right now. I've lost multiple games already where my opponent uses Shere Khan with the new Scar character, and I didn't even realize they were setting up lethal already. I was doing Rockstar Stitch plays, and they're just chilling. They set up 2 Shere Khan pass. I'm thinking, I have lethal next turn. I'm just gonna quest. He plays the new Scar. All of a sudden, every single time he attacks, he's gaining 2 lore. Bro had 5 characters on board, and he gained 10 lore by just going challenge. Shere Khan is nuts. Shere Khan plus the new Scar, pretty nice. Anyways, Ruby Amber is gonna make a big impact in the next format as well. Guarantee you're gonna see this, guys. People are already playing this deck in the current Chapter 1 format, and now with Rise of the Floodborn coming, they're gonna see stuff like Shere Khan in there, stuff like Teeth and Ambitions, Queen of Hearts. There's even the new queen that shifts into the Queen of Hearts that lets you draw every time you do a challenge, the way Shere Khan lets you gain a lore every time you commit to a challenge, right? Pretty interesting concept for a deck to be able to take advantage of challenges. I think it's really dope. But all in all, I think Ruby Amber gets so much better this format because you can take advantage of cards like Mufasa, you can take advantage of cards like Snow White, and you can take advantage of cards like the new Scar or Be Prepared, or even Queen, right? Obviously, Mother Gothel and Rapunzel combo off together. That's a very strong play in this deck, and it's a very consistent play in this deck. I feel like this is going to be a deck that you see on the first weekend of Rise of the Floodborn, so be on the lookout for it. Rise of the Floodborn is going to bring a lot of diversity to the metagame. Give it about 2-3 weeks. PPG or somebody will host a pretty big tournament and we'll see what the new best decks are. But when it comes to Lorcana, I'm always very confident that playing in real life is a lot different than playing on something like Pixelborn. So in real life, I'd be willing to take almost any deck to a tournament. Whereas on Pixelborn, obviously I want to grind with the best deck, right? In real life, playing is a lot different. So I do think that the competitive scene is going to thrive right now, especially if you're somebody who does take time out of their day to not only practice, but just do your research on like what the card interactions do, right? There's a lot of potential with a lot of these cards, and I think a lot of us have just started to scratch the surface because we're so used to playing Lorcana only one way, but introducing all these new mechanics and all these new characters is going to make a big difference in the game. When you go to locals this weekend, there's a couple things you got to look out for. You're going to have to look out for resist. You have to look out for new win conditions like Sleepy's Flute. The Arthur deck is very powerful. When you see them play Arthur, make sure to get rid of that Arthur. The Fairy Godmother legendary that just got announced. Be sure to look out for the Pinocchio aggressive decks because the aggro Pinocchio decks are very scary. They finish the game very quickly. The new Beast legendary is actually kind of threatening, so make sure you play around that. If you are going to play the discard deck, be sure to play around your opponents who have cards in their deck that draw cards. And if you're not playing the discard deck, maybe you want to consider playing extra cards that are going to draw you cards so that you don't lose out to the discard deck, right? Ruby is Ruby. You're going to get Dragon Fired and you're going to get Be Prepared, but there are some cool cards like the Mari that are going to be used for removal. There's some new charge cards in Ruby that you're going to have to play around like Queen of Hearts and the new Scar. Sapphire is going to teach you a lesson in resist, but it's also going to be ramping a little quicker with Winnie the Pooh and using cards like Falling Down the Rabbit Hole to get you more ink. One of the best cards in Sapphire though that you're probably going to see at your locals is Nothing to Hide. The one ink card lets you draw a card and look at your opponent's hand. I've used this card multiple times on Pixelborn already, and my opponent either has a Be Prepared, a Grab Your Swords, or a card that is removal based that I can now play around because I've been able to see their hand. Such insane leverage to be able to have that much information over an opponent, right? So I do think you're going to see that card at locals. And obviously the Steel Cinderella that can attack readied characters, along with the Namari legendary that can attack readied characters. A lot of the steel cards are going to either have resist or have ways to stay on the board now. It's not going to be as easy to remove them, and this deck is going to be one of the only colors that has item removal. So if you're playing against steel, it's no longer just Beast Hard-Headed that are going to play on you to remove your items. They're going to be able to play Benja now to remove your items as well. And last but definitely not least, Amber. Amber being still, in my opinion, the best color in the game. This color only gets better with the new cards that are coming out, like the Queen, the Cinderellas that let you activate songs a little earlier, and the new Rapunzels, which give you even more draw power. I'm super excited to play new decks. I'm super excited to build new decks right now that the cards are cheap. However, I'm not excited to try and find Rise of the Floodborn, right? I'm actually kind of nervous. We have all the enchants that just got released, so there is a bunch of enchanted hype now, and now we're gonna have to fight through all those hoarders and scalpers to try and get this product, right? So because of that, I just want to leave you guys with a good luck for this weekend. I really hope you guys get your hands on Rise of the Floodborn. I hope I can get my hands on Rise of the Floodborn, and I hope that we can all play some cool Lorcana games with all these new cards. If you guys want to practice or play test some of these new cards, like I said, join the Discord. Every now and then I'll play and I'll stream some games, or if we can play with each other, that'd be awesome because I really want to test these new cards. I'm obsessed. I'm probably gonna play an Amber Steel variant because that's a deck I have in real life, and I think that Amber Steel Song is probably still gonna be the best deck. You know, like realistically, most of the cards that came out, I don't think stand a chance against my Whole New World, Stitches, and Rapunzel, plus Lantern. I think those cards and sequence are way too good, and like I don't care how many cards you discard from my hand, buddy. I'm just gonna activate Whole New World. It doesn't matter. If you discard 7 cards, I'm just gonna draw 7 cards again. But I will be uploading some more videos on some decks and some actual gameplay. I just wanted to go over a brief recap of Chapter 1 and an introduction for Rise of the Floodborn. I'm very excited for Rise of the Floodborn, and again, I want to say thank you to everybody who has been on this Lorcana Goons journey since the first chapter. It means a lot to me that you guys have been liking, commenting, subscribing, and even just watching the videos. I know there's like 80% of you that watch the videos that aren't subscribed, so if you can subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. But regardless, thanks for watching. You guys are some true Lorcana Goons, and I look forward to making more content as Rise of the Floodborn comes out. Until then though, we will see you goons next time. Remember to follow us on all of our social medias as well, and I hope you goons enjoy the rest of your week. We will see you guys next time.